What happens when Hollywood's beloved enigma collides with late night's most ruthless provocateur? The result? A television moment that stunned audiences, rattled industry insiders, and exposed the fragile line between entertainment and exploitation. Tonight, we're diving into the explosive confrontation between Johnny Depp and Jimmy Kimmel, an interview that spiraled into one of the most controversial late-night segments in recent memory. If you think you know what happened, think again, because the story behind this moment reveals a side of Jimmy Kimmel that network executives never wanted you to see. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below. Was Johnny Depp justified in his response? Or did he overreact to late night's familiar tactics? The night began like any other inside the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio in Los Angeles. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Johnny Depp, Hollywood icon, artistic maverick, was set to return to the late-night stage for the first time in 3 years. Dressed in his signature eclectic style, Depp received thunderous applause as he made his way to the guest chair. At first, things seemed cordial. Kimmel greeted him with his usual manufactured warmth. "Johnny, welcome back. Been what, 3 years since you've sat on this couch?" Depp smiled politely. "Yes, I believe it has. Thanks for having me." But the tone shifted quickly. Kimmel leaned forward, the grin on his face sharpening. 3 years is a long time. A lot can happen, especially in your case. There was laughter from the crowd, but it felt uneasy. The air grew thinner, keen-eyed. Viewers noticed it immediately. Kimmel's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. There was a bite to his tone, an edge. Depp, ever composed, offered a graceful pivot. "Life happens, as they say, but I'm grateful to be here, to talk about the work. This film was a labor of love." Kimmel waved the comment aside. Sure, the movie. We'll get there. But first, I think the audience would love to hear about the more colorful aspects of your life lately." The camera caught Depp's reaction, brief but telling. A flicker of discomfort, a quick intake of breath. But the actor recovered swiftly, settling into the calm that has defined his public image for decades. "I've always believed the work should speak for itself, Jimmy," he replied. "The characters, the stories, that's what matters in the end." Kimmel laughed, harsh and loud. "Come on, Johnny. We're all friends here. You can drop the mysterious artist act. The audience wants the real story." The studio fell noticeably quiet. This wasn't playful late-night banter anymore. It was something else, something meaner. Depp shifted slightly in his seat, still collected. "I'm afraid I don't quite follow, Jimmy. I'm here to discuss the film. It's a project I'm incredibly proud of. Our entire cast and crew gave it everything." Kimmel's tone turned mocking. Right. The film where you play a misunderstood outcast. A bit of typecasting, wouldn't you say?" The audience audibly gasped. A line had been crossed, and everyone knew it. The camera returned to Depp, now silent, studying Kimmel with a calm intensity. Then, finally, he spoke. "You know, Jimmy," he said, voice steady, measured. "I've always admired how talk shows can create a space for genuine conversation. It's quite an art form, when done with respect." The word hung in the air like smoke. Whether Kimmel didn't notice, or deliberately chose not to care, he pushed forward, steamrolling past the rebuke. Speaking of art forms, and just like that, the interview continued. But the damage had already been done. Viewers at home felt it. The tension, the disrespect, the feeling that this wasn't an interview, but a trap. In the days that followed, the confrontation was replayed, dissected, and debated across social media, entertainment outlets, and editorial columns. To some, Depp's refusal to be baited was a masterclass in composure. To others, Kimmel's probing felt less like journalism and more like ambush theater. Regardless of where you stand, one thing is clear. This was more than an uncomfortable interview. It was a mirror held up to late-night TV, and the cracks were impossible to ignore. So what do you think? Did Johnny Depp handle the moment with grace, or did Kimmel cross a line that no host should? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where Hollywood's glossy surface shatters and the truth slips through. Kimmel forged ahead, flipping through his cue cards with theatrical exaggeration. Let's talk about some of your more erratic behavior on set, he said, feigning curiosity. I've heard from reliable sources that your lateness cost one production millions. The allegation landed like a slap. A ripple of discomfort passed through the studio. Audience members shifting in their seats, unsure if they were watching a talk show or a takedown. Depp, ever composed, gave a slight nod, though a weariness flickered behind his eyes. I've been fortunate to collaborate with some truly incredible directors and crews, he said evenly. Every production has its own pace and personality. I respect that process deeply and would never intentionally derail it. So you're denying the reports? Kimmel leaned in, his tone edged with confrontation. It was no longer an interview. It was an interrogation. What I'm saying, Depp replied calmly, is that perhaps we could focus on the work itself, the creative process, rather than rumors lacking any foundation. His voice never wavered, but the tension was unmistakable. A brittle silence followed, finally pierced by Kimmel's forced chuckle. He's not gonna bite, folks, he said, turning to the audience with a smirk. Then something passed, just a flicker, between Kimmel and his producer, offstage. A glance, a signal, a decision. Instead of pulling back, Kimmel pushed further. Let's talk about your relationship with substances over the years, Johnny. Our viewers are probably wondering how someone with such a vibrant lifestyle manages to still function on set. A visible shift rippled through the room. He'd crossed another line. Even seasoned Hollywood watchers knew this wasn't typical late-night fare. There were unwritten rules in celebrity interviews. Rules Kimmel now seemed determined to break. The studio felt colder. Depp studied his host with a quiet intensity. He'd fielded personal questions before, but this felt different. Calculated. Jimmy, he said, his voice steady. I've always felt that personal struggles should remain just that. Personal. There are young people watching. People who may be dealing with their own challenges. What kind of message are we sending if we turn pain into a punchline? A light smattering of applause followed, quickly silenced by a sharp look from Kimmel. He hadn't expected that level of grace, and it showed. His jaw tightened. Well, isn't that convenient? He sneered. Hide behind concern for the youth while dodging the question. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. That camera swept across the audience, catching more than a few uneasy expressions. This wasn't the charming banter people tuned in for. There was an edge now, a hostility. Depp, for the first time, allowed a hint of steel into his voice. I wasn't aware I was hiding, Jimmy. I came here in good faith to discuss a film that dozens of artists poured themselves into over the course of years. If this was your agenda, he added pointedly, perhaps it should have been mentioned before I agreed to appear. Kimmel let out a tight laugh, humorless, defensive. That's not how ratings work, Johnny. People don't tune in for an art house film. They want the real stuff, The juicy details. Depp turned, his gaze now directed at the audience. Is that what you really want? He asked. Or is that just what he wants you to want? The silence that followed was electric. Some audience members looked down. Others nodded quietly, in agreement. The dynamic in the room had shifted. For the first time, Kimmel didn't seem in control. Let's take a quick break, he announced abruptly, his showbiz smile snapping back into place. We'll be right, back with more from Johnny Depp. As the cameras cut to commercial, the set burst into quiet chaos. Producers swarmed the stage. Makeup artists rushed in. Mics were off, but front-row guests could see the silent, pointed exchange still unfolding between the host and his guest. Depp remained in his chair, declining a bottle of water offered by a nervous assistant. His posture was calm, collected, but his eyes never left Kimmel. Kimmel was mid-gesture, animatedly signaling to his executive producer when the cameras came back on. His smile returned, crisp and polished for the lens, but his eyes gleamed with something sharper. Welcome back, everyone. We're here with Johnny Depp, talking about his, let's say, fascinating career choices. Actually, Jimmy, Depp interjected smoothly. We haven't talked about the film at all yet. Kimmel waved that off with a flick of the wrist. Right. The film. Let's see. He flipped a card. You play a tortured artist with personal demons who's misunderstood by society. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The sarcasm stung, and the audience's hesitant laughter made the tension more apparent. Each character has their own truth. Depp replied evenly, much like each interview seems to have its own agenda. The remark hit its mark. Kimmel's smile tightened for a fraction of a second before he forced it back into place. Speaking of agendas, he said briskly, let's talk about your reputation for being difficult. I've got a quote here from a director who once said, quote, Johnny exists in a different reality than the rest of us. Depp raised an eyebrow. And which director said that, Jimmy? I'm not at liberty to say, Kimmel answered with a smug grin. Confidential source and all that. Convenient, Depp noted. Funny how the sharpest criticism always comes from someone too shy to sign their name. Kimmel leaned forward, his tone shifting. Are you suggesting I made it up? I'm suggesting, Depp replied carefully, that journalism, entertainment or otherwise, requires verification. Unless, of course, the standards are different on late-night television. The jab drew a few audible gasps. The audience, once uncertain, was now visibly locked into the duel. It was rare to see someone match Kimmel blow for blow. Let's move. On, Kimmel muttered, fumbling briefly with his cards. Your new film explores the tension between public perception and personal reality. Given your own experience with the media, is it ironic that you're playing a character fighting public opinion? The question itself wasn't unreasonable, but the tone dripped with bait. Not ironic, Depp said after a moment, his voice thoughtful. More like fitting. I think all of us, in some way, live with the gap between who we are and how we're seen. That's why we tell stories, to bridge that gap, even if only for a moment. For a second, Kimmel seemed taken off guard by the sincerity, but the moment passed quickly. Right. Very profound, he said with thinly veiled sarcasm. But let's get to what people really want to know. Your spending habits. $6 million on a cannon to scatter ashes, private islands, a wine budget bigger than most mortgages. Care to comment? The atmosphere shifted again. Even Kimmel's band leader glanced nervously at the producer hovering, just off stage. Something was clearly off script now. Depp's voice dropped, softer but clear. "Jimmy," he said, causing Kimmel to lean in slightly. "I've been in this business long enough to understand the game. I know controversy gets clicks. I know networks want viral moments. But I also know there's a human cost when someone's real life becomes tabloid bait." "That's rich," Kimmel snapped, tone sharpening. "Coming from someone who makes millions, pretending for a living." Depp didn't flinch. "Acting isn't pretending," he said calmly. "It's truth-finding. Inside fiction. Which, ironically, is more than I can say for what happens on this stage." The line landed like a hammer. Kimmel's face flushed. He knew he was losing control, and the audience knew it too. The energy in the room had shifted, no longer an interview, but a reckoning. People leaned in, not out of curiosity, but because something real was unfolding. "Well, Johnny," Kimmel said, his voice now edged with visible frustration. Even regular viewers could tell. Something was off. Kimmel's tone had shifted, sharper now, stripped of its usual sarcasm. "Maybe," he sneered, "if you spent as much time preparing for interviews as you do philosophizing about the nature of truth, we could have an actual conversation." "I did prepare," Depp replied evenly, "to discuss the film. You came prepared for something else entirely." The words hung in the air, a direct challenge to Kimmel's professionalism. His smile vanished. "Let me be clear about something," Kimmel said, his voice low and cold. "This is my show. My name is on it. I decide what we talk about here." "And that," Depp answered calmly, "is precisely the problem with entertainment today, isn't it? The belief that having power means you no longer need respect or integrity." A shocked murmur rippled through the audience. "Off camera." Kimmel's producer began frantically signaling, drawing a finger across his throat. "Cut the segment!" But Kimmel, now visibly angry, ignored him. "You want to talk about respect and integrity?" Kimmel's voice rose. "That's rich, you of all people, with your history." The studio went still. Even the band stopped their background fills. "My history," Depp echoed, his voice quieter now, reflective. "I've never claimed to be perfect, Jimmy. The difference is, I don't sit in judgment of others while pretending to welcome them as guests." Kimmel's face flushed with rage. "Don't lecture me about hospitality. You think you can come on my show and—" "Your show," Depp interjected, still calm. "That's the third time you've emphasized that. Maybe that's where the issue lies. Silence. The kind of silence that says something real is happening." "What exactly are you implying?" Kimmel demanded, all trace of charm gone. "I'm not implying anything," Depp said, holding his gaze. "I'm saying it plainly. There's a difference between interviewing someone and ambushing them, between conversation and confrontation, between entertainment and exploitation." Kimmel jabbed a finger toward Depp. "You don't get to dictate how this works. We invited you here as a courtesy." "A courtesy?" Depp repeated with a faint, sad smile. "Is that what we're calling it now?" The producer was now on stage, whispering urgently in Kimmel's ear. Kimmel shoved him away. "You know what, Johnny? I think we're done here," he snapped, turning to the camera. "We'll be right back after this break, with a guest who actually appreciates the platform we provide." Depp didn't flinch. He remained seated, composed. "That's unfortunate, Jimmy," he said gently. "I think your audience deserved to hear about the film and the extraordinary work of everyone involved." "Security!" Kimmel barked, pointing. "Escort Mr. Depp off the stage." Gasps erupted. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, clearly uncomfortable. "That won't be necessary," Depp said, standing smoothly. He buttoned his jacket, turned to the audience, and spoke directly. "I'm sorry we couldn't share more tonight. I hope you'll still support the remarkable team behind this film." He gave a nod to the band, cast one final look at Kimmel, and walked off stage, dignity fully intact. "Cut to commercial!" Kimmel shouted, tearing off his mic. But the cameras didn't cut fast enough. They caught it. Kimmel storming off in the opposite direction, shouting furiously at his producers. When the show returned from the extended break, Kimmel reappeared, tense, composed, offering a vague explanation about creative differences before introducing a hastily arranged filler segment. But the damage was done. Within hours, clips of the confrontation exploded across social media. Viewers overwhelmingly sided with Depp's calm, measured presence over Kimmel's increasingly hostile ambush. The incident peeled back the polished veneer of late-night TV, exposing the ego, control, and manufactured drama behind the so-called friendly banter. For Depp, the clash didn't damage his reputation. It reinforced it. Supporters pointed to the exchange as proof of what they'd long said. Beneath the tabloid caricature was a thoughtful artist, unwilling to be reduced to a viral soundbite, even at the cost of publicity. As for Kimmel, the backlash was swift. Sponsors voiced concern. Network executives held emergency meetings. What was meant to boost ratings had instead spotlighted the toxic undercurrent of celebrity media. By refusing to take the bait, Depp hadn't just defended his integrity, he exposed the entertainment machine itself, a system that too often confuses controversy with content and conflict with conversation. If you found this story revealing about how the entertainment media really works, hit that subscribe button. The industry doesn't want these behind-the-scenes moments exposed, but we do. Comment below. If you were in Johnny Depp's shoes, would you have walked away calmly or confronted Kimmel more directly? Your thoughts shape the stories we tell next.